Hi, my name is Sophia Longo, and I'm going to be talking about the Me Too movement and sort of where it stands today in terms of policy and legislation. So, firstly, I want to talk about the history of the Me Too movement. So, the movement was initially founded in 2006, but it really became globally recognized in October 2017 when the hashtag #MeToo began trending worldwide. This movement was created to target sexual and gender based violence, and it became so globally recognized because as the hashtag was trending, many high profile artists and entertainers began sharing experiences of sexual harassment and assault in the entertainment industry. And notably, actress Alyssa Milano sort of sparked the beginnings of this movement by sharing the hashtag #MeToo on Twitter, and she encouraged other survivors to share similar stories, which they did. I think the hashtag received something like 12 million responses on social media within the first 24 hours of Alyssa Milano's tweet, with millions of people sharing stories of sexual violence, gender inequities, and struggles with power dynamics in the workplace. So the trend didn't come out of nowhere. It was largely in response to the Harvey Weinstein scandal breaking. Harvey Weinstein was a very notable, recognizable film producer in Hollywood, and he was very influential, very powerful producer in Hollywood. And what happened was on October 5th, 2017, the New York Times published an expose detailing just decades of sexual harassment allegations against Harvey Weinstein. And then in the months following, numerous famous actresses detailed their experiences with him. Some of these actresses included Gwyneth Paltrow, Angelina Jolie, Rose McGowan, and countless others. In total, over 80 women accused Weinstein of inappropriate sexual acts, which included sexual coercion, sexual harassment, sexual assault, and he would often threaten these young actresses that they wouldn't have a career or they would be blacklisted from Hollywood if they didn't do what he wanted, basically, because he was so influential and powerful at the time. And the trial went on for a while. By the end of it, Weinstein was sentenced to a total of 39 years in prison, which he is obviously still serving. So, current policy action to combat this, one of the major kind of focuses of the Me Too movement in terms of policy has been dissolving certain NDAs, because non-disclosure agreements, because the misuse of NDAs has been very prevalent in the entertainment industry, and it allows sort of powerful, influential people to get away with this behavior because it prohibits their victims from speaking out. So in 2023, Colorado, Rhode Island, and Virginia all passed reforms to prevent the misuse of NDAs. This brought the total number of states to pass these reforms to 18 since the Me Too movement's inception, or when it really began taking off in 2017. So this kind of helps make it possible for victims to speak out against employers that have sexually harassed them, sexually assaulted them, without the threat of legal action for breaking an NDA. And then another focus of the Me Too movement in terms of policy has been anti-harassment bills. So as of 2023, 25 states and the District of Columbia have passed a combined total of over 80 anti-harassment bills. So what many of these bills work to do is break down sort of the restrictive definitions of workplace harassment or assault. Both Colorado and Vermont broke down the severe or pervasive standard. So the severe or pervasive standard was a standard that had been established in federal courts, which basically determined whether or not an act would be considered harassment or abuse in a workplace environment. But many supporters of the Me Too movement found this standard to be very restrictive, and they sort of felt it only targeted the most harmful forms of sexual harassment and abuse, so that other forms basically got overlooked or swept under the rug because they didn't meet this standard. So by breaking down this standard, again, this helps make it easier for survivors to pursue legal action against employers or those who have sexually assaulted or harassed them. So the Me Too movement under the Trump administration, the Me Too movement kind of started under the Trump administration. It started in 2017. And so on March 27, 2017, Trump actually revoked the 2014 Fair Pay and Safe Workplaces Order, which was put into place under the Obama administration. And what this did was it basically rolled back a ban of forced arbitration for sexual harassment, sexual assault, or discrimination claims. And what forced arbitration is, or these clauses, they're essentially known as cover-up clauses, and they're often used to keep sexual assault claims out of court and off public record, which is sort of harmful for the Me Too movement because forced arbitration clauses often involve private legal proceedings and secret filings and private attorneys. So they kind of help hide or cover sexual harassment or assault claims. And they actually kind of, in some ways, protect perpetrators of sexual violence within the workplace because, like I said, they keep it out of court and off public record, essentially kind of silencing victims. So this could make it more difficult for victims to speak out against those that have sexually assaulted them because they might feel that they will be silenced or that they're the only one. Like, even if sexual assault or discrimination is rampant within a company or industry, they might not be aware of other cases within that industry or within their company, even if it's all coming from the same person, because forced arbitration sort of keeps that all quiet and contained so that it doesn't come out about the perpetrator. So in the Me Too movement under the Biden administration, in March 2022, Biden signed a law actually limiting the use of mandatory arbitration for claims involving sexual assault. So this sort of rolled back what Trump had done, and this wouldn't force those pursuing legal actions for sexual assault into mandatory arbitration, meaning that it would be on public record and people would be able to, notice patterns of sexual assault or sexual harassment within a certain industry or company, or if it's coming from the same person, like a Harvey Weinstein, for example. And then inspired by the various state reforms, like the ones I talked about with limiting the use of NDAs and anti-harassment bills, the federal government under Biden passed the Bipartisan Speak Out Act. So this act allows NDAs only to the extent that they reach sexual harassment and sexual assault claims. So basically these NDAs cannot be enforced in instances of sexual assault and harassment. So they can't prevent victims from speaking out or threaten them with legal action if they do speak out in cases of sexual assault and sexual harassment. And this bill was signed into law by President Biden on December 7th, 2022. So then this is my stakeholder analysis on various groups and sort of what their position would be on the reforms I talked about, like limiting the power of NDAs and making the definition of what constitutes sexual assault less limiting. So firstly, sexual assault victims, I said that they would be in support of these reforms. Many of these reforms I talked about make it easier for them to speak out and take legal action. So those that have experienced this treatment in the workplace would be supportive of this, as it allows them to seek justice against those that have assaulted them or harassed them. And then women's support groups and sexual assault advocacy groups, I also said they would be in support. These groups would support these reforms to just improve the experience for women and sexual assault survivors and make it less difficult and trying for them to take action against those that have wronged them, be it through sexual assault or harassment or workplace discrimination. And then corporation executives, Hollywood executives. I put oppose. Obviously, this doesn't include all corporation executives or all Hollywood executives, but when thinking about a group of people that would oppose these reforms, obviously those that have benefited, like, the Harvey Weinsteins of the world, would be against making it easier for their victims to take legal action against them, and for making the definition of sexual assault a little bit broader so that it would include their behavior. Like, they would be against making it easier for people to break their NDAs or take legal action against them. And then lawmakers and Congress. So I kind of talked about, the differences under the Trump and Biden administration, but like with the Speak Out Act, it has seemed that lawmakers in Congress are in support of this issue. It seems fairly bipartisan, and the Speak Out Act was passed with little issue. So these lawmakers are supportive, it seems, of these reforms, like limiting the power of NDAs and broadening the definition of sexual assault. So then my recommendations, firstly, it would be to increase education on this matter, because in order to see like real change, there needs to be some sort of cultural change to prevent sexual assault from happening in the first place. And I do think the best way to do that would be through education, whether it's teaching people about or teaching students about, the various types of assault, harassment, the definition of consent, things like that, just to prevent this from happening in the first place. Because as much as, we pass bills limiting the power of NDAs and other anti-harassment bills, it's important to change the cultural attitudes towards this to prevent this behavior from happening in the first place, and to prevent influential, powerful people from assaulting those below them, basically. And then another recommendation would be clearer definitions on what constitutes sexual violence. So I mentioned that some states had passed anti-harassment bills, which, sort of make the definition clearer on what constitutes sexual violence. I think it was Colorado and Vermont that broke down the severe or pervasive standard, which was very strict in limiting on what counts as sexual assault. So a lot of other behaviors would get sort of swept under the rug, and victims wouldn't be able to pursue legal action against the perpetrators. And with the absence of clear definitions of inappropriate sexual behavior, especially in the workplace, this allows for some gray area, which makes it more difficult to persecute this crime and puts more pressures on the victims to clearly spell out, what had happened, and sometimes not even have a case from it, even if they felt they were wronged. And then broader advocacy, behavior like this, sexual violence and harassment in the workplace, is often able to go unpunished because witnesses or bystanders fail to report it. Like in the case of Harvey Weinstein, it seemed like it was sort of well known in Hollywood that Harvey Weinstein was doing this to many young actresses, and people just failed to speak out about it, and so it was able to carry on for decades. Not necessarily like the victims failing to speak out, but those that were aware of it or associates of Harvey Weinstein, that sort of allowed this behavior to carry on for so long. So greater outreach about this issue, I think, would help individuals fully understand what this behavior looks like so that they can speak out against it when they see it. And these are my citations. So that is all. Thank you.